Mistakes are a part of basketball. Everyone makes them. Question is though, what kinds of mistakes? While it's true even the NBA's best players do screw up sometimes, there are certain mistakes that the pros just don't make, or so you think. Here are some blown plays that were so bad, they had us all ask, how are you in the NBA? 4 missed dunks in a row. It sounds impossible, but there was recently a moment in the NBA where at least 4 dunks were missed in a row. It happened during an Atlanta game between the Hawks and the Grizzlies in the opening minutes. Amazingly, it also involved several players. The first player to completely biff a dunk was Bruno Fernando. After receiving a pretty good lob, Bruno somehow missed the rim almost entirely. Bruno is 6'9" and should be able to make dunks like this easily, so the miss was a surprise. But fans weren't shocked. Yet. By then, just minutes later, another 6'9" Hawk did almost exactly the same thing. Trae Young chucked a lob from the top of the key, and even though John Collins had beaten his defender and was wide open, he just completely blew the dunk. In fact, he blew it even worse than Bruno had minutes before. Collins smacked the ball off the front of the rim, which is commonly agreed to be the worst way to miss a dunk. Bruno had probably overjumped, causing him to miss a dunk, but at least jumping too high is kinda cool. Collins underjumped, so he missed a dunk, and he did it for probably the lamest reason you could think of. This was enough to blow people's minds in Atlanta, but believe it or not, the terrible plays continued. Now it was the Grizzlies' turn to screw things up to sub-NBA standard. Josh Jackson stole the ball for a wide open fast break, and I'm talking wide open. This was the kind of fast break where everyone else just stops running. That's how open you are. But Josh Jackson, 6 feet 8 inches tall and all, leapt towards the rim with his near 7-foot wingspan and dunked the ball like somebody's drunk uncle in the driveway. He added the cherry on top by groaning like the drunk uncle too. Going 0 for 3 with dunks, depressed fans in attendance were now sure they were witnessing history. Yet, just as they were piling into a long line around the alcohol stand, another crazy miss happened. Dillon Brooks stole the inbound pass from the Atlanta Hawks. This was already a pretty low bar mistake to watch in an NBA game, but Brooks capped it off with a mistake of his own that would pretty much erase the bad pass. He missed not 1, but 2 wide open layups. Even the drunk uncle would have made these. Nobody wants to buy NBA tickets just to watch a sloppy scrimmage match. Then again, a Hawks-Grizzly game is probably not the best place to search for basketball excellence either. The edibles kick in for Rajon Rondo. It's been rumored that some NBA players like to get high before, after, or even during games. California teams in particular. Klay Thompson, Stephen Jackson, and former coach Don Nelson are all alleged examples. One thing we know for sure is that Don Nelson is now a full-time pot farmer in Hawaii. But another California team that recently made the DEA want to sniff around their locker room was the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers were in San Antonio and in front of a bitter Texas crowd that was still getting used to not making the playoffs. The two teams ended up battling out neck and neck until the final minutes. At the absolute climax of the game, the Lakers were down 3 with just 12.4 seconds left on the clock. This is an anxious moment because with that amount of time, it's not clear whether you should try to tie the game with a 3 or get a quick bucket and then foul. It's a decision that could go either way, and most coaches will draw up a play with multiple outcomes depending on what happens in that moment. One thing you should absolutely not do is pass up a wide open shot if you have it, but unfortunately for LA, Rajon Rondo was about to do exactly that in dramatic fashion. To be fair, had he done this in any other situation, it would have been 100 times worse. Every Laker on the court was conflicted about whether to shoot the 3 or take the easy 2. Sadly, Rondo's bizarre actions forced LeBron to shoot a Hail Mary 3, and instead of 3 points or 2 points, the Lakers ended up with 0 points. The edibles kick in for the Houston Rockets. Rondo was far from alone. Once during the course of a single quarter, 3 different players on the Houston Rockets made eyebrow-raising blunders at the basket. The first was Austin Rivers, who basically went on one long, stumbling fall from around half court to behind the hoop. Mid-fall, he threw up a half-assed layup that basically served as a pass to the home team Thunder. Yet, while Rivers was covering himself with glory on one end of the court, Russell Westbrook was having his talent stolen by the Monstars on Moron Mountain. Once Westbrook realized this, he decided to try passing to his teammates, something he never does. But unfortunately, receiving passes from Westbrook was confusing for the other Rockets players, and the struggles continued. Just look at this replay of Clint Capella. Forgetting the rules. Physical mistakes are one thing. If you fall over or blow a layup, at least you can write it off as a fluke accident. Mental mistakes are a little different. There's nothing more disturbing than watching NBA players forget basic rules or make actual decisions that no professional should ever make. One crazy example was when the Philadelphia 76ers became confused about how many players are supposed to be on court during the game. Somehow, they ended up with 6 instead of 5. The first people to notice were of course the visiting Chicago Bulls. Head coach Jim Boylan was especially aware that his players were outnumbered. Another missed dunk. Remember when I said that missing a dunk off the front iron is the worst way to miss? Well, somebody should really have told that to Avery Bradley back in 2018. Bradley and the Pistons were at the Staples Center, trailing the Clippers by just a couple buckets towards the end of the first half. Bradley wound up in the perfect situation, a wide open fast break that shrank the Clippers' lead even thinner. But instead of converting on this play, Bradley jumped not even close to high enough. He did jump high enough to land in the first class seat on the express train to Shaqtin' a Fool though. This would have been the most embarrassing play of the month, even without Bradley also getting blocked by Patrick Beverley a split second later. The whole sequence was unbelievable. Even the announcers admitted it was an embarrassing moment for poor Bradley and the Pistons.
Oh, that's an embarrassing moment.
Russell Westbrook continues to struggle. Apparently, Moron Mountain is a long way away, and it was a while before Russell Westbrook had a chance to go back and ask the Monstars for his talent back. In the meantime, he produced some more unbelievably terrible lowlights. This totally blown layup, which could have been made by anybody with arms and legs, was made even more alarming by what Westbrook yelled afterwards.
With the help, here's Westbrook on the baseline.
If there were any young basketball fans watching, they should have covered their ears and their eyes. What's worse is Westbrook had the bad luck to be playing in the game announced by Jeff Van Gundy. Van Gundy is kind of like an annoying kid on the playground, and he has some typically whiny comments about Westbrook's performance. Of course, the not top 10 plays don't exist.
That'll be on the not top 10 plays.
Nor does any interest in what Jeff Van Gundy has to say most of the time. But he was right. This was a terrible, terrible play. Far below the standard of what we've come to expect from the NBA's elite. Westbrook was at it again a while later when he blew an easy dunk during the fast break. The most amazing thing about this play is not that he missed the dunk, although that's definitely amazing, it's that the dunk turned into a near perfect pass to Joel Embiid, who turned right around and gave an assist to Ben Simmons. This play reeked of Monstar interference, and it may have been the turning point where Russell decided it was time to hop on a space shuttle, fly back to Moron Mountain, and demand his talent back as soon as possible. The edibles are too weak for PJ Tucker. Is it just me, or are the Houston Rockets appearing a lot on this list? Anyway, yet another Rockets-related event that made Wiz Khalifa look straight edge was when PJ Tucker fumbled the inbounds pass in the game against the Knicks. But to say he fumbled it really doesn't begin to describe it. Just watch what he does.
Yeah, but they're gonna use their 24. Oh, that's the ball is live. Volley! Banks it home! And it's a one-point game. Tucker fell asleep on the inbounds pass.
That's unexplainable. Most times, the errors, even seriously boneheaded errors, you can at least make a guess as to what the player was thinking. J.R. Smith thought the Cavs were up in game 1 of the finals. The 76ers thought you could have 6 players instead of 5. Even Rajon Rondo thought he should pass up the layup for a 3 instead. But what did PJ Tucker think? Why did he just watch the ball? Why did he hold his arms like they were little bird wings? The fans in Madison Square Garden who have been watching professional basketball for decades, this didn't look much like the NBA, more like LSD. Eric Gordon, who inbounded the ball, looked like he crapped his pants when Tucker pulled this. Part of the reason Gordon was so pissed was because this was a critical moment of a close game. With less than a minute to go, the last thing you want to do is turn your 4-point lead into a 2-point lead. That's exactly what PJ Tucker did, and he did it in one of the most baffling ways we've ever seen. DeMarcus Cousins makes the worst pass of all time. This is the worst pass of all time. Don't believe me? Watch.
Bad pass from Cousins as Davis turned his back. Here's Cantor. Strides out, finishes!
Let's examine this a little bit. There are multiple factors that make this the worst pass ever. First, trouble begins before the pass even starts. Notice Cousins is taking the ball up the floor. Why? Cousins isn't a point guard, like, at all. The man is a talented player, but guard skills are not his thing, so the Pelicans were asking for problems from the beginning. Next, he almost, not quite, but almost travels. This is because he picks up his dribble before he's sure he can make the pass. If Cousins had NBA level guard skills, then he would know not to, well, you know, he doesn't. Next, Cousins realizes he can't make the pass. Anthony Davis is cutting, and there are not 1, but 2 enormous New York Knicks directly in front of him. Cousins is so close to Kristaps Porzingis that Porzingis could probably reach out one of his Mr. Fantastic arms and swipe the ball. Despite all of this, being in the wrong position, almost traveling, picking up his dribble too early, seeing that his teammate is moving in the other direction, and seeing two opponents directly in front of him, Cousins decides to make the pass anyway. The result is a slow, gentle bounce pass which lands politely in the hands of Porzingis. Here you go, sir. But then, life gets even worse for Cousins. Just moments after making NBA history, he gets absolutely posterized by Enes Kanter. Cousins only gave a half-hearted attempt to block the shot and basically volunteered himself to get a facial. This was a huge hit with Madison Square Garden fans. It was also a huge hit with Charles, Kenny, Ernie, and Shaq later that week. There was a time when Boogie Cousins was considered perhaps the best center in the league. He's had many great moments, but this may be the worst play of his entire career. The Toronto Raptors go cold. When one player goes cold, you either bench him or start passing to another player who can make up the slack. But what do you do when the entire team goes cold? This happened to the Toronto Raptors during Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. During one particular play, all 5 players on the floor attempted and biffed easy shots. First, DeMar DeRozan drove to the hoop for a layup, but since he was running incredibly slow for some reason, he couldn't beat his defender and had to pass it back out. That made it Fred VanVleet's turn. Despite having nobody near him, VanVleet bricked the open 3. Next up were CJ Miles, Kyle Lowry, and the big man Jonas Valanciunas. Everyone took turns blowing layups, until eventually LeBron snatched the rebound and called for time. It's worth pointing out that every single one of these blown shots was a potential game winner. The score was tied with just seconds to go in Game 1 of the semifinals. When you factor that in, this has to be one of the most disappointing moments for any NBA team in recent history. The Raptors went on to lose this game by a single point in overtime. They never got as close to victory again. The Cavaliers swept them and eventually made it to the NBA Finals. All that just makes this one horrible moment that much harder to watch.